The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched high above the delegates like a crystal cathedral. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows, their different forms creating a rainbow of shapes and colors. Some glowed with inner light. Others moved like liquid metal, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. At the center of it all stood a simple podium where the final vote was being announced. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood perfectly still as the numbers appeared on the massive display screens. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her blue uniform bore the simple Earth symbol, a small blue and green circle. She did not move as the final tally showed the decision that would change everything. "The motion passes," announced Speaker Velnath, a towering creature made of living crystal whose voice rang like bells throughout the chamber. By a vote of 847 to 23 with 156 abstentions, the Galactic Council hereby expels the species known as humans from council space and revokes all diplomatic privileges. A wave of satisfied murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegates, who looked like giant praying mantises, clicked their approval. The ethereal collective's representatives, floating clouds of glowing mist, pulsed with calm satisfaction. Even the normally quiet tree-like sylvans rustled their leaves in agreement. Councillor Theiss of the Ethereals floated forward, her misty form taking on a more solid appearance as she spoke. "Let the record show the reasons for this action. The human species has repeatedly demonstrated excessive aggression in conflict resolution. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. They refuse to follow proper procedures and act without committee approval. Most dangerous of all, they encourage individual thinking among other species, disrupting the harmony we have worked so hard to achieve." More agreement echoed through the chamber. Councillor Zithkar of the Crystalline. Veltar stepped forward, his faceted body reflecting the chamber's lights in rainbow patterns. "The humans have been given many chances to change their ways. They have been warned repeatedly about their dangerous tendencies. Yet they continue to act recklessly, putting entire star systems at risk with their impulsive behavior." Sarah Chen listened to every word without changing expression. Her hands remained clasped behind her back in a relaxed military posture. The other human delegates behind her, Admiral Torres, Dr. Patel, and Trade Representative Kim, all stood equally still and quiet. "The Council grants humanity 30 standard cycles to remove all personnel, ships, and installations from Council space," Speaker Velnath continued. "All trade agreements are canceled. All joint research projects are terminated. All military cooperation agreements are void. Humanity will have no further contact with Council civilization." The chamber waited. This was usually when the expelled species would protest, threaten, or beg for another chance. The Korthax had screamed for 3 hours when they were expelled 50 years ago. The Silicon Brotherhood had threatened to destroy half the galaxy. Even the peaceful Aquarians had wept crystal tears and pleaded for mercy. Sarah Chen simply nodded, once. "We understand," she said in a clear, calm voice that carried easily through the vast chamber. "Goodbye." That was it. No arguments, no threats, no emotional outburst. The human ambassador turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The other human delegates followed in perfect order, their faces showing no anger, no sadness, no fear. Councillor Theiss watched them go with growing unease. "That's all? No protest?" Speaker Velnath's crystalline face showed confusion. "Perhaps they finally understand the wisdom of our decision." But as the humans reached the great doors of the chamber, Sarah Chen paused and turned back. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, and something else showed through. Not anger or hurt, but something that looked almost like pity. "Good luck," she said quietly, and then they were gone. Within hours, reports began flooding in from across Council space. Human ships at trade stations were powering down and requesting departure clearance. Human researchers at joint facilities were packing their equipment and transferring their projects to local staff. Human military advisors at border outposts were filing final reports and preparing to leave. What amazed everyone was how organized it all was. The humans had clearly prepared for this possibility. Ships appeared from nowhere to collect personnel and equipment. Entire research stations were dismantled and removed with mechanical efficiency. Trade routes were handed over to local authorities with detailed instructions and complete documentation. On the council world of Nexus Prime, Councillor Zithkar watched through his office window as the last human transport lifted off from the spaceport. The ship rose silently into the purple sky, its engines glowing blue-white against the evening stars. "Sir?" His aide, a young Veltar named Shimkar, entered the office carrying data tablets. "The humans have completed their withdrawal from the Nexus system. All facilities have been transferred to our control." Zithkar took the tablets and scanned through the reports. The humans had left everything in perfect order. Every piece of equipment was labeled. Every system had detailed operating instructions. Every ongoing project had complete files explaining what had been done and what still needed to be finished. "They've even left recommendations for replacement personnel," Shimkar noted, his crystalline voice tinged with surprise. "And training materials for the positions they held. How professional of them," Zithkar murmured. But something felt wrong. It was too easy, too clean. In his experience, expelled species either fought the decision or collapsed into chaos. They didn't just leave. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds. Human embassies closed their doors and handed over the keys. Human ships departed from orbital stations with their running lights dimmed in a traditional farewell salute. Human civilians packed their belongings and quietly boarded transports home. The strangest part was how they said goodbye to their alien friends. On Research Station Gamma 7, Dr. Elena Vasquez hugged her Sylvan research partner, Bloom of Spring, and whispered something that made the tree being's leaves flutter with sadness. On the trade world of Merchant's Rest, Captain Jake Morrison shook hands with his Zephyrian business partner and left behind a small gift wrapped in earth paper. These weren't the actions of an angry species. These were the actions of people who had expected this day to come and were ready for it. 3 days later, the last human ship crossed the border out of Council space. Long-range sensors tracked it until it vanished into the vast emptiness between the spiral arms. Then there was nothing. No radio signals, no energy signatures, no trace that 4 billion human beings had ever existed. In the council chambers, Speaker Vel Nath called an emergency session to discuss the transition. "The human withdrawal has been completed ahead of schedule," she announced to the assembled delegates. "All former human positions have been filled by qualified council species. All human projects have been transferred to appropriate departments. The situation is under control." But even as she spoke, the first reports were already coming in from the Outer Rim. Pirate attacks had increased by 40% in just 3 days. 2 research stations had gone dark without explanation. Trade shipments were arriving late or not at all. Councillor Theiss floated in her private chamber, reviewing the data streams from across council space. Something was wrong, but she couldn't quite identify what it was. The galaxy was functioning normally. All systems were operational. Everything was under control. So why did she feel like they had just made a terrible mistake? Outside her window, the stars seemed dimmer somehow, as if a light had gone out somewhere in the darkness. And in that darkness, 4 billion humans had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only silence and a growing sense that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. 6 months had passed since the humans left, and Councillor Zithkar was starting to hate his job. His crystalline fingers tapped against his desk as he read through the daily reports, each one worse than the last. The morning briefing that used To take 15 minutes now stretched for hours as crisis after crisis demanded attention. Pirates hit another convoy in the Vega sector. His aide Shimkar reported, his young voice trembling slightly. 17 ships lost. The Merchant Guild is demanding increased patrols. Add it to the list, Zithkar muttered, not looking up from his screen. The list had grown very long. What about the missing colony ships? Still no contact with New, Garden or Prosperity Station. Long-range sensors show their last known positions, but no life signs. The families are... Shimkar paused, searching for the right words. They're asking questions we can't answer. Zithkar finally looked up at his aide. The young Veltar's crystal body had lost much of its natural glow, a sign of stress among their people. How many ships have we lost this month? 237, sir. That's not counting the ones that are just missing. The numbers hit Zithkar like a physical blow. Before the humans left, they might lose 10 ships per month to pirates, accidents, or natural disasters. Now they were losing more than 20 times that number, and the rate was climbing every week. What do the patrol reports say? Shimkar's crystal form flickered with embarrassment. The patrol ships, they're requesting backup before investigating distress calls. And, sir, 3 patrol ships haven't reported back from their last missions. Zithkar leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. 6 months ago, if a council patrol ship sent out a distress call, human ships would arrive within hours. They had a saying, first to fight, first to help, last to leave. The council had always found their eagerness to rush into danger both admirable and foolish. Now there was no one rushing to help anyone. Sir? Shimkar's voice was quiet. There's something else. The Frontier Research Initiative has officially suspended operations. The Frontier Research Initiative. The massive project to explore and map the galaxy's outer regions had been humanity's pet project. They had provided most of the funding, most of the ships, and most of the personnel. Without them, the initiative had ground to a halt in just 6 months. Any word from the replacement teams? Sir, there are no replacement teams. The other species don't want to go to the frontier. They say it's too dangerous. Too dangerous. Zithkar almost laughed. The humans had been cheerfully exploring the most dangerous regions of space for decades, treating black holes and unstable stars like interesting puzzles to solve. They had mapped more of the galaxy in 50 years than the rest of the Council. Had mapped in 5 centuries. His communication device chimed with an incoming priority message. The sender was Queen Zixandra of the Zephyrian Collective, and her message was brief but alarming. Emergency Council session. The Devourers are moving. Zithkar's crystal body went cold. The Devourers were ancient machine intelligences that lived in the void between galaxies. For thousands of years, they had been slowly testing the galaxy's defenses, sending small scout forces to probe for weaknesses. The Council had always managed to hold them back, but it had never been easy. The emergency session convened within hours. The great chamber felt empty with so many vacant seats. Not just the human delegation, but representatives from species that had grown too nervous to travel. The galaxy was becoming a dangerous place, and everyone was starting to notice. Queen Zixandra stood at the central podium, her mantis-like form towering over the other delegates. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as she spoke in the clicking language of her people, translated instantly by the Council's systems. Long-range sensors have detected massive devourer formations at coordinates 847 Alpha through 923 Gamma, she announced. At least 300 ships, possibly more. They're moving toward our outer colonies. A wave of nervous chittering and humming filled the chamber. Counselor Thys floated forward, her misty form pulsing with anxiety. That's impossible. The Devourers haven't mounted an offensive this large in over a century. The data is confirmed, Queen Zixandra replied. Our deep space monitoring stations all show the same readings. The formations are larger and more organized than anything we've seen before. Speaker Velnath's crystalline voice rang out over the growing panic. What do our military advisors recommend? There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, Admiral Koreth of the Veltar military stood up. His crystal form was darker than usual, a sign of deep worry among his people. Our current defensive plans assume human fleet support, he admitted. Without their rapid response capabilities, we would need at least 6 weeks to organize and deploy an effective defense force. 6 weeks? Theis's misty form brightened with alarm. The outer colonies won't last 6 days against a devourer assault. Then we need to contact the humans, suggested Counselor Vreen of the Silicon Brotherhood, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. This is exactly the kind of crisis they specialized in handling. Absolutely not, snapped Counselor Thys. We expelled them for good reason. We cannot go crawling back at the first sign of trouble. The first sign of trouble? Admiral Koreth's voice was sharp. Counselor, we've lost more ships in 6 months than we lost in the previous 5 years combined. Our trade routes are collapsing. Our research programs have stopped. Our colonies are going dark one by one. This isn't the first sign of trouble. We're already deep in crisis. The argument that followed went on for hours. Some delegates wanted to recall the humans immediately. Others insisted that the council could handle the situation without outside help. A few suggested that maybe the humans weren't as essential as they had seemed. But as the debate raged, more reports kept coming in. The devourer fleets were accelerating. They would reach the outer colonies in less than 2 weeks. And despite all their discussion and planning, the council still had no idea how to stop them. Finally, Speaker Velnath called for order. We will send a message to human space requesting assistance with the current crisis. The vote was close. 512 in favor, 487 against, with 127 abstentions. It took another 3 hours to agree on the wording of the message. When it was finally sent, it was formal and polite, carefully avoiding any admission that the council might have made a mistake. The response came back 6 hours later through automated systems. The Terran Federation is not available to accept diplomatic communications at this time. This is an automated response. Please do not reply to this message. That was all. No explanation, no counteroffer, no suggestion of alternative solutions. Counselor Zithkar sat in his office that night, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out, there, the devourers were coming. Somewhere else, 4 billion humans were apparently too busy to help. And here in council space, everything was falling apart. He thought about the last conversation he'd had with a human, Captain Sarah Chen's quiet goodbye in the council chamber. At the time, he had thought her calmness was acceptance of defeat. Now he wondered if it had been something else entirely. His aide Shimkar knocked on the door and entered with another stack of reports. Sir, the night shift reports are in. 14 more ships missing. 3 more colonies have gone silent. And sir, the Merchant Guild is asking if maybe we should consider apologizing to the humans. Zithkar looked at the young Veltar and saw his own fears reflected in those crystal features. The galaxy was falling apart, and they had sent away the only people who knew how to fix it. Add it to tomorrow's agenda, he said quietly. All of it. Outside his window, the stars seemed darker than ever, and somewhere in that darkness, something ancient and hungry was coming home. 1 year after the humans left, Counselor Thys floated in her private chamber, surrounded by holographic displays that painted the walls with charts, graphs, and data streams. The numbers told a story she didn't want to believe, but could know. Longer deny. Computer. Display trade route efficiency comparison. Pre- and post-human departure. The wall lit up with 2 galaxy maps side by side. The first showed trade routes glowing like golden threads connecting thousands of worlds, with smooth flows of commerce spanning the galaxy. The second map looked like someone had taken scissors to the golden threads. Routes were broken, dim, or missing entirely. Trade efficiency down 67%, the computer announced in its neutral voice. Average shipping times increased by 400%. Commercial insurance rates have increased by 800% due to elevated risk factors. Thess dimmed her misty form in despair. 800%. Before the humans left, shipping insurance was barely worth thinking about. Now it was bankrupting entire sectors. Display security incident comparison. New charts appeared, and these were even worse. Pirate attacks had increased by 900%. Missing ships had gone from rare events to daily occurrences. What the reports called unexplained disappearances were happening faster than the council could investigate them. But it was the next display that truly frightened her. Show me Devourer incursion response times. The wall filled with tactical displays showing the outer rim of the galaxy. Red dots marked Devourer probe attacks over the past century. Before the human departure, green lines showed response times. Human ships arriving within hours to drive off the mechanical invaders. After the departure, the response times were measured in weeks, not hours. And in many cases, there had been no response at all. Thais? Her aide's voice came through the communication system. The emergency council session is beginning. She floated through the corridors of the council building, past windows that looked out on the capital city. Even here on the central world, things were changing. The streets were less crowded. Many alien species had returned to their homeworlds, unwilling to travel the dangerous space lanes. The vibrant cosmopolitan feel of the capital was fading. The council chamber was only half full. Speaker Vel Nath stood at the central podium, her crystalline form somehow dimmer than usual. "Fellow councilors," she began, "we must face the truth about our situation. The Devourer assault has begun. 3 Outer Rim colonies have fallen completely. 7 more are under siege. Our military response has been inadequate." Admiral Koreth stood up, his crystal body flickering with stress patterns. "Inadequate is a kind word for it, Speaker. The truth is, we can't respond effectively at all. Our ships take weeks to organize and deploy. By the time we arrive, there's nothing left to save." Counselor Zithkar activated his speaking platform. "Admiral, what exactly did the humans do differently?" "Everything," Admiral Koreth replied without hesitation. "They had ships positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy. When a distress call came in, they didn't wait for committee approval or proper paperwork. The nearest human ship would respond immediately, often arriving within hours." "But surely that was reckless and inefficient," protested Counselor Vreen. "Proper military procedure requires planning, coordination, and approval from higher authority." "Admiral," Koreth's laugh was bitter. "Counselor, the humans saved over 15,000 lives last year alone with their reckless procedures. How many lives have we saved this year with our proper procedures?" The silence that followed was answer enough. This floated forward to take her turn at speaking. "I've been analyzing our current situation compared to the year before human departure. The results are disturbing." The chamber's main display activated, showing the data she had been reviewing. Gasps and clicks of distress echoed through the assembly as the numbers became clear. "The humans weren't just participants in our civilization," Thias continued. "They were its immune system. They handled thousands of small crises that never made it to our attention. Pirates, slavers, natural disasters, equipment failures, medical emergencies, they dealt with all of it." "But how?" asked Queen Zixandra. "We have the same ships, the same technology." "No, we don't," Admiral Koreth replied. "We have better ships than they did. Better weapons, better shields, better sensors, but they had something we don't have. Individual initiative. When a human captain saw a problem, they fixed it. They didn't wait for orders or form a committee or fill out request forms, they just acted." Counselor Vreen's metallic voice carried skepticism. "Surely you're exaggerating their importance?" Thias activated another display. Before human departure, we recorded an average of 57 minor crisis interventions per day across Council space. Merchant ships assisted by human patrols, colonies helped with technical problems, medical emergencies handled by human medical ships. These incidents were so routine we barely noticed them. She paused, letting the weight of her next words sink in. After human departure, these interventions dropped to zero. All those small problems became big problems. All those big problems became disasters. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans hadn't just been members of the council. They had been its maintenance crew, its emergency services, its first responders. They had been quietly holding the galaxy together, and the council had thrown them out for being too helpful. "There's more," Thys continued. "I've been analyzing human space before their departure. Do you know what we found?" She activated a final display showing star charts of human territory. What they saw shocked everyone. Massive construction projects, on a scale that dwarfed anything in council space. Shipyards that could build entire fleets. Research stations that had been developing technologies decades ahead of anything the council possessed. They weren't just living in council space, Thys said quietly. They were preparing to leave it. These construction projects began decades ago. The humans saw this day coming long before we did. "That's impossible," Speaker Velnath protested. "Our intelligence services monitor all member species. We would have detected such activities." Admiral Korath laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Speaker, the humans were our intelligence services. Half the council's spy network was staffed by humans. They were monitoring themselves for us." The weight of their situation began to settle on the assembly like a heavy blanket. They had expelled the very people who kept their civilization running, and those people had been quietly preparing for exactly this scenario. "What about their current location?" asked Counselor Zithkar. "Surely we can track 4 billion people and their entire fleet." "We've tried," Admiral Korath admitted. "Long-range sensors detect no trace of human civilization anywhere in the known galaxy. It's as if they've simply vanished." "Or," Thys said quietly, "as if they've developed technology that makes them invisible to our sensors." That thought hung in the air like a poison cloud. The humans hadn't just left. They had disappeared using capabilities the council didn't know they possessed. What else were they capable of? A new alarm began sounding throughout the chamber. The emergency tone that meant immediate danger to the council worlds themselves. Speaker Velnath's aide rushed to the podium with a data tablet. Velnath read it quickly, and her crystal form went completely transparent with shock. "The Devourer. Main force has penetrated the middle rim," she announced. "Estimated time to reach council space, 72 hours. The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates called out questions, demands, and suggestions all at once, but through the chaos, one voice cut clear and calm. "We need to call them," said Admiral Korath. "We need to ask the humans for help." "They already refused," Counselor Vreen protested. "That was when we asked politely," Admiral Korath replied. "This time we need to beg." The vote was unanimous. Every delegate present agreed to send an emergency broadcast throughout the galaxy, pleading for human assistance. The message was simple. To humanity, we were wrong. We need you. Please. As the broadcast went out across the stars, the council waited in their chamber, surrounded by the wreckage of their pride and the approaching shadow of destruction. Somewhere in the darkness, 4 billion humans might or might not be listening. All they could do was hope that somewhere out there, someone still cared enough to answer. Admiral Kenth of the Veltar stood on the bridge of the Council flagship Unity's Pride, watching the endless darkness of deep space scroll past the view screen. 3 weeks had passed since the Council's desperate broadcast, and there had been no response from humanity. The Devourer fleets had penetrated the inner rim, leaving dead worlds in their wake. "Admiral," called Navigation Officer Thren, her crystal voice tight with strain. "We're approaching the coordinates provided by the old human navigation databases." Kent nodded, studying the tactical display. This was their last hope, a joint expedition into the unknown regions where the humans might have fled. Ships from 12 different council species had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return. "Any signs of human activity?" "Nothing on standard sensors, sir. But these readings—" Thren paused, her crystalline form flickering with confusion. "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies. Something out there is very large." The first sign they found was subtle, a perfect circle of clean space where the cosmic dust had been swept away. Then another circle, and another. Whatever had passed through this region had been enormous and had moved with purpose. "Admiral," called sensor specialist Vorth from his station, "I'm reading artificial structures ahead, but the scale, it's unlike anything in our databases." The view screen shifted to long-range view, and what they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Floating in the void was a structure that dwarfed entire star systems. Metal frameworks stretched for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, supporting platforms that could hold entire fleets. Half-built ships the size of small moons hung in construction cradles. "By the ancient crystals," whispered Thren. "What is this place?" "A shipyard," Kent replied, his voice filled with awe and growing fear. "The humans built a shipyard larger than our entire home system." They approached carefully, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The massive construction site appeared abandoned, its automated systems still functioning, but no signs of life anywhere. Dr. Silth, the Expedition's science officer, was studying her readings with growing excitement. "Admiral, the technology here is incredible. These construction methods are decades ahead of anything we know, maybe centuries. Are there any humans here?" "No life signs detected. But Admiral, these structures aren't just big, they're smart. I'm reading adaptive materials, self-repairing systems, artificial intelligence networks. This isn't just advanced, it's revolutionary." They docked with what appeared to be a control station, a small structure by the standards of this place, but still larger than most council ships. The interior was clearly designed for humans. Proper gravity, breathable atmosphere, and familiar controls. The computer systems were still active, protected by security that took their best encryption specialists 3 days to crack. When they finally accessed the logs, what they found changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Chief of Colonial Engineering," the first log entry began. "Project Genesis Phase 1. Today we begin construction of the Deep Space Infrastructure Network. The Council doesn't know it yet, but this is going to be necessary." Kent watched the log with his senior officers gathered around the display. Dr. Vasquez appeared on screen, a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and tired eyes. "The models are clear," she continued. "The Council's decision-making process is too slow for crisis response. Their military doctrine is too conservative for asymmetric threats, and their political structure is too fragmented for long-term planning. When the Devourers make their next major push, the Council won't be able to stop them." The log was dated 15 years before the human expulsion. "How did they know?" whispered Dr. Silth. The logs continued, showing the gradual construction of the massive installation. Thousands of human ships arriving with materials, entire engineering corps working in shifts around the clock, and all of it hidden from Council sensors by technology that was barely comprehensible. Phase 2, complete. Dr. Vasquez reported in a later log. "Deep space manufacturing is now operational. We can build ships faster than the Council can build shuttles, but speed isn't enough. We need better designs." The next series of logs showed human engineers developing new ship designs, weapons systems, and defensive technologies. They weren't just preparing to leave Council space. They were preparing to fight something the Council couldn't handle. Phase 3 complete, came Dr. Vasquez's final log entry. All civilian populations have been relocated to the deep infrastructure. Military assets are in position. We've done everything we can to prepare. When the time comes, we'll be ready. The timestamp showed this log was recorded 3 days before the Council's expulsion vote. They knew, Kent said quietly. They knew exactly what we were going to do, and they were ready for it. Commander Zeph, leader of the Zephyrian delegation, clicked her mandibles nervously. If they could build all this, why didn't they fight the expulsion? Why did they just leave? Because they're not conquerors, replied Dr. Silth, studying the human technical manuals left behind. Look at these designs. Every ship, every weapon, every defensive system. They're all designed to protect, not to attack. Even their largest. Battleships are built around rescue and evacuation capabilities. They found more installations as they explored deeper into human space. Massive defensive platforms that could shield entire star systems. Mobile shipyards that could relocate whenever necessary. Research stations that had been developing technologies the Council couldn't even understand. But they found no humans. Where are they? Kent asked his science officer as they studied their findings. Unknown, sir. But look at this. Dr. Silth activated a holographic display showing energy readings from across the region. These installations are all connected by some kind of quantum communication network. They're still operating in coordination, but under autonomous control. So the humans could be anywhere in the galaxy, and they'd still be able to monitor and control all of this? Or anywhere outside the galaxy, Dr. Silth replied grimly. The implications hit everyone like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just prepared to leave Council space. They had prepared to leave the galaxy entirely if necessary. They had developed capabilities that made them completely independent of galactic civilization. On their way back toward Council space, the expedition made one more discovery that chilled them to their cores. Hidden in an asteroid field, they found a monitoring station that was still fully operational. The station's logs showed continuous surveillance of Council space, tracking every ship movement, every military deployment, every political decision. The humans had been watching everything, analyzing everything, predicting everything. Computer, display Devourer invasion projections, Kent commanded. The display lit up with tactical analyses that were frighteningly accurate. The human computers had predicted the exact timing of the Devourer assault, the exact routes they would take, and the exact failures of the Council's response. Probability of Council survival without intervention, 12.7%. The computer announced. Probability of Council survival with minimal human intervention, 94.2%. And what constitutes minimal intervention? Kent asked. Deployment of 17 human battle groups for a period of 48 hours. 17 battle groups. Less than 1/100th of what the humans had built in their hidden shipyards. For them, saving the entire galaxy would be a minor inconvenience. The final log entry on the monitoring station was recorded just 3 hours before their arrival. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, now Director of External Affairs. We know you're coming. We know what you're looking for. And we know what's happening to your people back home. She paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see through. Time to the Council officers who would eventually watch this recording. We've been listening to your calls for help. We've been watching the Devourers tear through your worlds. We've been calculating the cost of intervention versus the cost of inaction. Another pause, longer this time. We're still human. When people are in trouble, we help them. That's what people do. The recording ended with coordinates, a meeting point in neutral space. Kent stared at the display for a long moment, then turned to his communications officer. Set course for those coordinates. Maximum speed. Admiral? Thren asked quietly. What do we say when we get there? Kent thought about the massive shipyards, the advanced technology, the careful planning that had gone on for decades, while the Council remained oblivious. "We say thank you," he replied, "and we hope they remember what it means to be human." The Unity's pride turned toward the coordinates, racing against time to reach the people they had cast out, hoping against hope that humanity would prove to be better than the Council that had rejected them. The Council homeworld burned. From orbit, Counselor Zithkar watched through the observation deck of the emergency command station as devourer machines carved through the planet's defenses like hot metal through ice. The crystalline cities of his people, built over thousands of years, crumbled under the mechanical assault. "Sir," his aide Shimkar reported, his young voice breaking, "the southern continent has fallen completely. The devourers are advancing on the capital region." Zithkar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on him like a mountain. In just 6 weeks, the devourer invasion had swept through the outer rim, crushed the middle systems, and now reached the very heart of Council space. All their plans, all their preparations, all their careful military strategies had proven useless against the relentless mechanical tide. Any word from Admiral Kenth's expedition? They reached the coordinates 3 days ago. Since then, nothing. Nothing. The last hope of finding the humans had vanished into the same silence that had swallowed 4 billion people a year ago. The Council was truly alone now, facing annihilation with no one left to blame but themselves. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "incoming transmission from the planetary defense grid. The Devourers have breached the orbital platforms. They're requesting immediate evacuation for all remaining personnel." Zithkar opened his eyes and looked down at his homeworld one last time. Soon it would be just another dead rock in space, stripped of all life and resources by the mechanical swarm. Another monument to the Council's failure. "Begin evacuation procedures," he said quietly. "All ships are to—" The sentence died in his throat as every alarm in the command center suddenly went silent. The tactical displays flickered and changed, showing something that made no sense. "Sir?" Shimkar's voice was confused. "The Devourer signatures are changing." On the main display, the red dots marking Devourer ships began disappearing one by one. Not moving away or powering down, but simply vanishing from sensors as if they had never existed. "What's happening down there?" Zithkar demanded. The answer came from the planetary defense coordinator, his voice filled with amazement. "Unknown ships are engaging the Devourers. The bogies appeared out of nowhere, and, sir, the Devourers are running. Running. In all of recorded history, the Devourers had never retreated from a battle. They fought until they were destroyed, or until they had consumed everything in their path. But now, according to the tactical display, the massive Devourer fleet was withdrawing from the planet's surface. "Get me visual confirmation," Zithkar ordered. The main screen switched to a surface camera just in time to show something impossible. Ships unlike anything in the Council databases swept through the atmosphere, their sleek hulls gleaming like silver lightning. They moved with perfect coordination, striking at the Devourer forces with weapons that turned the ancient machines into clouds of scattered metal. But it was the way they fought that amazed everyone watching. These weren't the careful defensive tactics the Council used. These ships danced through the battle like living things, taking risks that should have been suicidal, but somehow succeeding at every turn. "Those ships," whispered the tactical officer, "they're using individual combat protocols. Each ship is operating independently, but they're coordinated like a single organism." Zithkar felt his crystal body beginning to glow with hope. "Are those—" His question was answered when a new voice came through the communication system, calm, professional, and unmistakably human. "Council Command, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. We heard you were having some trouble." Chiatur. Silence that followed was broken by Shimkar's excited cry, "The humans! They came back!" On the tactical display, more human ships were appearing throughout the system, not just a few vessels, but entire fleets that materialized from nowhere to engage the Devourer forces. Their technology had clearly advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed, ships that could remain invisible until they chose to attack, weapons that could disintegrate Devourer machines in seconds, and coordination that made the mechanical swarm look clumsy and slow. "Admiral Chen," Zithkar managed to say, we didn't think you would come." "We've been watching," came the reply. "We saw what was happening to your people. Within hours, the impossible had become reality. The Devourer invasion force that had swept through half the galaxy was in full retreat, pursued by human fleets that struck like silver lightning and disappeared back into the void. The mechanical tide that had seemed unstoppable was broken against human determination and technology that bordered on miraculous. Admiral Chen's flagship, the Remembrance, took position near the Council command station. Zithkar requested permission to come aboard, desperate to speak with the humans face to face. The Remembrance was unlike any ship Zithkar had ever seen. The corridors seemed to reshape themselves as he walked through them, and the technology was so advanced it was almost magical. When he finally reached the bridge, he found Admiral Chen waiting for him. She looked older than when he had last seen her, with new lines around her eyes and gray streaking her dark hair. But her posture was still straight, still confident, and her expression was still calm and professional. "Counselor Zithkar," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "It's good to see you again." Zithkar stared at her, his crystal body flickering with emotions he couldn't name. "Admiral, why? After everything we said, everything we did, why did you come back?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, looking through the bridge windows at the planet below where human ships were helping with rescue and recovery operations. "Because when people are in trouble, you help them," she said finally. "That's what people do." "But we expelled you. We called you dangerous. We treated you like criminals." Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, you did. And maybe you were right about some of it. We are dangerous to those who threaten innocent lives. We do make decisions based on emotion, like the emotion that says suffering is wrong and needs to be stopped. And we do act without committee approval, because sometimes waiting for permission means people die." She turned to face him directly. "We're still all those things you didn't like about us. The difference is, now we have the power to act on our beliefs without asking anyone's permission. Your technology. How did you advance so quickly?" "We didn't advance quickly," Chen replied. "We'd been preparing for this day for decades. We saw the patterns, studied the threats, and developed the tools we'd need to protect the galaxy. We just did it quietly, in places where the Council couldn't see." Zithkar felt a wave of shame wash over him. "You were protecting us even while we were pushing you away." "We were protecting everyone. That's our job." "Your job." Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young ambassador who had stood in the Council chamber a year ago. "Counselor, do you know what humans call ourselves when we're talking among ourselves, away from aliens and diplomats and formal occasions?" Zithkar shook his head. "Guardians," she said simply. "We're the guardians of this galaxy. We always have been, even when you didn't want us to be." The tactical display chimed with an incoming report. The Devourer forces had been driven beyond the galactic rim for the first time in recorded history. Human pursuit fleets were making sure they kept going. "What happens now?" Zithkar asked. "Now you rebuild," Chen replied. "And we go back to doing what we've always done, watching the dark places, responding to the distress calls, and keeping the galaxy safe." Will you come back to the Council?" Chen considered this for a long moment. The Council made it clear that they don't want guardians who act without permission. They want members who follow rules and wait for approval. We can't be that. We won't be that. Then how? We'll be your neighbors instead of your roommates, Chen said with a slight smile. We'll watch from a distance, Help when you need it, and try not to interfere with your politics. But if something like this happens again..." She gestured toward the tactical display showing the retreating Devourer fleets. "We'll be listening." 3 days later, the human fleets began their withdrawal. They left behind medical supplies, repair, equipment, and detailed plans for improving the Council's defensive capabilities. But they offered no treaties, no formal agreements, no demands for recognition or gratitude. As the last human ship prepared to depart, Admiral Chen sent a final message to the Council. "To our friends in Council space, you have our frequency. Use it if you need us. We'll be out here keeping watch." Zithkar stood in the observation deck of the rebuilt command station, watching the human ships fade into the distance. Shimkar approached with a data tablet containing the first reports from across Council space. "Sir, the humans left monitoring stations throughout our territory, not to spy on us, but to watch for threats. And, sir, they've already stopped 3 pirate fleets and helped evacuate 2 colonies that were having technical problems." Zithkar nodded, understanding finally dawning. The humans hadn't come back to rejoin the Council. They had come back to do what they had always done: protect people who needed protecting, whether those people wanted the protection or not. Sir Shimkar asked quietly. "What do we tell the Council about the human Zithkar thought about Admiral Chen's calm confidence, about the tea